I declare this meeting open for the transaction of any business which may properly come before it. The city of Moose Jaw is located within Treaty 4 territory on the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. The Nahiawak translation of Moose Jaw is Mosotapskin and is the shared landscape for the indigenous peoples and settlers from around the world who call Moose Jaw home. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we're committed to move forward in equal partnership with Indigenous nations, with respect and in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. First thing on our agenda is to confirm the agenda. So I'll need a motion that the regular meeting of City Council, Monday, April 8th, be adopted and presented. Adopted as presented. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Froese. All in favor? That is carried. Are there any public acknowledgements from council this evening? I'm seeing none. Next, we'll have the adoption of the minutes. I'll need a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting of City Council held on Monday, March 25th, 2024 be approved and adopted. Councillor Eby, second by Councillor Looning. All in favor? That is carried. Is there any member of council required to declare a pecuniary interest on any of the matters on the agenda this evening? I'm seeing none. There are no public hearings this evening. Therefore, we'll proceed to go into the Committee of the Whole. We'll need a motion that we go into the Committee of the Whole under the chairmanship of Deputy Mayor Councillor Eby to deal with original communications, delegations, and petitions. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Looning, second by Councillor Blanc. All in favor? That is carried. Councillor Eby, I'll just move the microphone.
There we go. Thank you, Your Worship. We have 5 items in Committee of the Whole this evening. The first being Communication 61 from the Engineering Services Department, Provincial Landfill Program request to address by the representatives from the Ministry of Environment, and I will need a motion. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Chair. I would move that representatives from the Ministry of Environment be allowed to address members of City Council.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. And I do believe our representatives are joining us virtually. And so if you're there, you can join us now and you will have 10 minutes to present.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Tara Pidborowczynski. I'm the Director of the Compliance Assurance Unit within the Environmental Protection Branch with the Ministry of Environment. And I'm joined here with our staff from Environmental Assessment, who are Jeff Dareniewski and Brittany Neumeyer, who are going to help me present to you today. I am going to attempt to present my presentation. Teams is always fun when it comes to getting stuff up on presenting appropriately. All right, can you see just the presentation up?
Yes, we're good.
Yep, we're good to go. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go through our solid waste regulations. Just a quick overview. Process for new landfills. Jeff and Brittany will be talking about our environmental assessment process. And then we'll be talking about landfill siting and landfill design. And then a few things just specifically around the Moose Jaw landfill. Concerns about the existing site, as well as expansion challenges at the existing site. And then we'll have time, if there's time for questions, then we can answer those as well. So currently, solid waste management facilities, landfills, are regulated as per the Environmental Management Protection Act. Industrial landfills, which are municipal landfills that accept more than 20% industrial waste, or private landfills, are permitted with an industrial waste works permit. And municipal landfills are those that are municipally or government owned and accept less than 20% industrial waste, have a municipal refuse management permit. We do not have our current municipal refuse management regulations are very old. They're from 1986, and they are not very comprehensive. So we do refer to best management practices for design of landfills. The municipal refuse management regulations are kind of the very lowest basis of things, and then we refer to best management practices like Alberta's or Manitoba standards. We are working on our own regulations, but those will not be out in time to oversee this project. We have various code chapters, which are regulations that give opportunities for proponents to be a little bit more innovative. We have those for transfer stations, as well as compost code is currently being developed. And then we have a significant amount of guidance documents for landfill construction, design, operation, and closure. And again, that's because our regulations are pretty thin. And so we have a lot of information on our website, as well as in those guidance documents. And again, we refer to those best management practices from other jurisdictions. And typically what we see is Alberta, Manitoba, or British Columbia. And I believe in this case, Moose Jaw is referring to the Alberta standards. So the process for a new landfill in Saskatchewan is that the project must be screened to determine if it requires an environmental assessment. And where it may require an environmental assessment would be, for example, if there's specific concerns like native prairie or other receptors that are unique and need to be protected. Stakeholder consultation is required. Submission of a construction application, including a site suitability report, design plan, and closure plan is required. And then the ministry reviews all of that information. Depending on that review, there's typically quite a bit of back and forth on an application just to make sure that we have everything that we need to ensure that it's environmentally protective. Once everything's completed, they receive a permit to construct with quite a few conditions that need to be met, including submission of quality assurance, quality control information, operations plans, monitoring plans, emergency response plans, as well as all the as-built, and that in a final plan. Once everything's approved, they would receive a permit to operate that again also has quite a few different conditions, specifically around reporting, monitoring, and what things they can and cannot do with the landfill. And then the ministry regularly conducts inspections as well as does document review of groundwater monitoring, annual reports, and those types of documents. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and Brittany to talk about the environmental assessment process.
Thanks, Sarah. So the environmental assessment process is a complementary process to some of the other environmental acts and regulations. It's a process used to assess and predict the environmental effects of a proposed project before it's carried out. The key there being before it's carried out. So this is the first step for a new project in the province, and this is carried out through the Environmental Assessment Act. Not to be confused with the Federal Impact Assessment Act, which is the federal process. While similar, does have some different criteria. For a project like this, it wouldn't meet the federal thresholds and require a federal impact assessment. But essentially where some of the differences lie is that with the environmental assessment process, there is a priority put on making sure that the public is aware of the project, understands what the environmental safeguards in place will be, and has a chance to learn about the project before it moves forward. Should go to the next slide, Tara. And essentially there's kind of two pathways for any type of project that is going through the environmental assessment project. Projects will typically come through as a screening, meaning that it is more of a high-level review of the project to see if it meets the criteria of a development under the Environmental Assessment Act. And with that, the Minister of Environment will make a determination based on those criteria, whether or not it requires an environmental impact assessment or whether or not it is free to proceed with other permitting and licensing requirements. The difference with the environmental impact assessment is that it is a bit more comprehensive and has a larger emphasis on public participation in that decision making. And part of that is a legislated 30-day minimum public review period where any member of the public is allowed to review the application and provide comments to the Ministry of Environment to assist with the Minister of Environment's decision on the project. Then I'll flip to the next one, Tara, and I won't go into a lot of detail on the criteria. The way that they're written in the Act, it's quite high level, but this is what the screening would be applying the project against. So whether or not it met one or more of these criteria would be the reasoning to whether or not a environmental impact assessment would be required or whether or not the project proceeds with permitting and licensing. And I will pass it back to you, Tara.
Thank you, Jeff. Right. The biggest basis for a landfill, or one of the big bases for a landfill, is where it's sited, and so that means where is it? Where is it? What's the geological and hydrogeological conditions? Is it an appropriate place for a landfill? And so one of the things that's required in the design report or application is the site suitability report that describes all of that information. So we require a technical investigation. So people need to go out, they put drill holes in, understand, what does the soil look like? Where's the groundwater? Where are the aquifers? To ensure that we're being protective of any of those receptors or things that could be impacted by a landfill. The report needs to include all of the topography and surface water hydrology within 1,000 meters of the proposed site. The statement describing all of that geological and hydrogeological information that they found as part of that technical investigation. And then any other site-specific considerations. So are there rare or endangered animals, species, plants, etc. that may be on that site or around that site. And in that siting, we also have setbacks that are in the municipal refuse management regulations. And so waste disposal grounds cannot be within 500 meters of basically where people are with food and homes, hotels, motels, and that type of thing, as well as 100 meters away from a highway or cemetery. We also have in the standards for landfills in Alberta, and I'm referring to this one just because this is what Moose Jaw is using as their basis, I believe, for their best management practice, is the geological requirements are prescriptive, so they need to have 5 meters of clay or equivalent, and then setbacks for water bodies is 300 meters. So in the landfill design plan or application, we require all that site suitability information, as well as a site plan that indicates the legal site boundary, the location of any access roads, earthworks, that type of thing. Any of the adjacent land use. So is it agricultural? Where's the closest home? Where's the closest water body, groundwater well? All of that information needs to be in that design plan. We also require that the design plan indicate the landfill design itself, of course, and again, this is based on best management practices because our regulations don't stipulate the type of liner leachate collection system that needs to be in there, but we are looking for a seepage barrier system, so that could be plastic liners, clay liners. It depends on the site. It's very site dependent on what that seepage barrier system looks like. Surface water management, so we want to keep water outside of the landfill, outside of it, and water that's in the landfill, and same with the leachate pond if they have that. We need to understand where is groundwater monitoring, where are all those monitoring wells going to go, which way is the groundwater direction, and that should have been in the site suitability report or determined as part of that technical investigation. We require leachate collection, so any of the water that goes in the landfill on the waste that touches the waste, that's called leachate, and we want to keep that in the landfill, and it needs to be taken out of the landfill and put into a leachate pond or disposed of appropriately. And then we also ask for final design contours. So how high is this landfill going to be? What is the final cover going to look like, so that we have a game plan of what this landfill is going to look like as time progresses. And then if required, what the landfill gas management might look like. And all of this needs to be done by a qualified person. So this is somebody that has the core competencies and skills to design this to applicable standards. So this is just an example of a compliant landfill design. So, typically in the past, and this is what the existing Moose Jaw landfill is just on the ground. There is no liner, leachate collection, and a new landfill. This is, you can see the liners being installed, and the pipe at the bottom here is the leachate collection under the gravel. So existing Moose Jaw landfill issues. The existing landfill does not meet current design and construction requirements. So it does not have a liner or leachate collection. And what that means is that any of the leachate being generated is going to groundwater and potentially impacting groundwater. And they do have some issues definitely on that site. The existing property does not meet the setbacks required to water bodies and occupied dwellings. There's residents that are within that 500-meter setback. And again, there's impacts to the localized groundwater system from historical operations without that liner or leachate control system. And challenges that the site would be faced at with if they want to or wanted to expand at that current site is that, that again, the setback distances, water bodies, residents, and the airport are all within the setbacks for a new landfill. So we wouldn't typically approve a landfill being in this location today. And then unfavorable geological conditions. So they don't have the amount of clay and clayey materials that are now required to be between the landfill base and the groundwater. The groundwater is also quite high on this site. So there's the geological or hydrogeological conditions are not favorable for a landfill in this area. And again, that depth of groundwater would limit the design of new cells. We're typically looking for, outside of that 5 meters of clay, we're looking for at least a meter of between the base of a landfill cell and the highest groundwater level. So that would limit the design of new cells. That's our presentation. So if there's any questions, we can take those now.
Thank you very much. Council, questions? Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I just have a question through you. Thank you for the presentation, everyone. Appreciate having you come out today and do this with us. Just a question regarding expanding the old site. You had said something about an either or originally when it came to the liner versus the 5 meters of clay. Is it 5 meters of clay and a liner, or 5 meters of clay or a liner?
No, it's both.
It's 5 meters of clay plus a liner on top?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. And you talked about farmstead issues out there. Now what, like in the case of expanding the old one, the farm, and no disrespect to the folks out there, don't get me wrong, but those folks came long after the landfill was there. So if it were to expand, would that still not be able to expand because that farm is too close?
No, it would depend on the situation. So we have allowed, because this happens, as you can imagine, in Saskatchewan, most landfills are out in farm areas, and a residence can pop up within that 500 meters if it's not hasn't been approved by the RM appropriately or by government relations. And we have allowed for a variance to that setback in special conditions. So it does require a bit of work to do that, but it is not. If everything else looks good for that landfill, and we can get, there's approval from the landowner, the RM or the city or whoever it is, we have had a couple instances in the past that we have allowed a variance to that setback.
Okay. And the existing landfill, as we know, is quite a mound there now. If it were to expand to the east, and the city could potentially put down, I have no idea if this is even a thing, but we could put down 5 meters of clay is there any reason we couldn't expand it east? If in fact we could put, because it is in such a low spot, I think you probably could put 5 meters of clay down there and continue east.
We would need to rely on a qualified person for that. So that would come down to a design engineer to indicate whether or not you could suitably design a landfill with building it up. You would lose a lot of airspace by building it up versus digging something down and then going up. But
Right, okay.
you know, there are engineering solutions that perhaps could happen.
There are options potentially, just that the existing site is about 900 meters long in total. And I think there's about 700 meters of land available there heading east if it was an option. So it'd be interesting to see how that shakes out. So you could potentially close, you would have to close the existing landfill and cap it. And then if the design, if it could meet criteria, you could potentially look at adding 5 meters is what you're saying, depending on the design.
I'm not going to comment. I would have to, an engineer would need to,
Yeah, understand.
to talk to that one. Yeah.
Makes fair. Okay, thanks for now. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Froese?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And I guess my question is, you know, from the studies that I've seen before, when we started to pursue a new landfill location, it was my understanding one of the real key reasons was because of the existing landfill's current location being so close to freshwater stream system, and also currently impacting groundwater. Two things that we can't fix at all. So I'm just wondering, like when we're looking at trying to expand that, would those not be really continue to be the two indicators of why we couldn't expand the existing one?
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes down to that site suitability that, you know, that groundwater is close to surface and it's running towards obviously the surface water body there. And I don't believe it meets the setbacks for that surface water body. And that is something that we typically would not give a variance for.
Yeah, I mean, the regulations have obviously changed dramatically since the first time this landfill was put in. But yeah, that was my understanding, which is why we sought to find a different location, was specifically because regardless of being able to apply clay or any of the other things that would help us to expand it, the fact is that it's too close to a freshwater stream, and it's affecting the groundwater, which impacts you know, everything downstream, and that was my understanding, which sounds like that's still the reason.
Yeah, and on top of that, even if it wasn't, you know, within the setbacks with the surface water body, with those groundwater impacts, building a landfill on top of that may actually end up triggering more assessment work, because it may impact how that groundwater moves and how fast it's moving.
Thank you, thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Blanc?
Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you for your presentation. A couple of the questions have been answered by my previous, when my previous colleagues asked them. One of the questions, though, is about existing yard sites. And I did take a drive out there and measured, and there is one site that is well within, you know, it's well under the 500 meters. And if we expand, there's going to be a couple other sites involved in there. So my question is, because Councillor Logan asked about, you know, existing yard sites that were, you know, put in after the fact. By expanding it and now bringing a couple other yard sites into the fold, will that make a difference on expansion? Like, will they?
Absolutely. Yeah, that would definitely factor into expansion. If everything else, this was just even in the middle of the field without the surface water, groundwater issues, it does bring another level of assessment if you're looking at a variance to a setback.
Okay. So the two main issues out there is basically the setback from yard sites and the groundwater.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and setbacks also from the surface water and that highway as well. Those are also, I believe, within setbacks.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
so
the highway.
So it's a bit hemmed in, this current location.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blanc. Any further question? Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your presentation. One question that comes to mind is how much dependency on the agriculture, the effect on agriculture, arable land, does the Environment Minister, do you work with them closely to decide, taking some arable land out of our Saskatchewan stock before we go ahead with something? And the other question, I don't know if you could answer it, but I've noticed a trend to privatized landfills. Are you able to give me an idea of how many privatized landfills we have in Saskatchewan? Thank you.
Currently, we have, I believe it's, well, just for municipal waste, we have about 3 or 4 that are privatized, fully privatized. And a privatized landfill is a bit different in the fact that it does have to have a financial assurance in place. So if this was a private company that came in to build a landfill for the region, then prior to constructing that landfill, we would require a financial assurance that would cover the cost of all the decommissioning and reclamation for that site in the future. So if they walked away, the government would have money to decommission that site because they aren't a municipal entity that is part of government, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
On your agricultural part, I don't know if I can answer that. Let's see if Jeff
I don't mind tackling that one. So as part of the environmental assessment process, we have reviewers from multiple ministries on our review panel, the Ministry of Agriculture being one of them. And I don't have a specific example that is landfill related to essentially taking up ag land, but it is something that has come up quite frequently with renewable projects. And one of the things that we look at when assessing a new greenfield site is the soil production value of the land that's being taken up. So this stems a lot from public concern about good agricultural land being taken up by industrial projects. And just like historically speaking, landfills were often cited in low value ag land, which is why we are running into a lot of situations today with non-compliance and citing issues around surface and groundwater. So there is a shift to find more stable sites for all types of industrial projects, whether it's landfill or other types of plants or operations. But there is obviously a balance to find suitable land that is, for one, affordable for the proponent who wants to construct that project, but also taking into consideration the soil productivity, the crop value of that ag land. So it is a factor that is looked at as part of the environmental assessment process.
Thank you. Yeah, the statistic I was able to gather, the 20 years between 2001 and 2021, Saskatchewan high value ag land decreased by about 2 million hectares. And I think we're around 8% nationally. Of course, a bigger concern to us in Saskatchewan than, but thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Anything further, Council? I have no further speakers in the queue, so thank you so much for your presentation and all the information tonight. And we will now carry on with our meeting. So thank you so much.
Thank you. If you have any follow-up questions, let us know and we can answer those after the fact as well.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What are your wishes, Council? Councillor Looning?
Thank you. I will move that communication number CC 2024-0061 regarding the provincial landfill program request to address representatives from the Ministry of Environment be received and filed.
Thank you. Anything further, council? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? And that is carried. Next, we have Communication 55 from the Engineering Services Department, Refuture Solid Waste Management Facility. Representatives of GHD Limited and Associated Engineering have been asked by administration to address City Council, so we will allow them to speak now. If I can have a motion, Councillor Logan.
Thank you. I move that representatives of GHD Limited and Associated Engineering be allowed to address members of council.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. So if our speakers are here virtually, you can introduce yourselves and begin your presentation.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for having us. My name is Mark Parker. I work for GHD Limited, leading the project team on the solid waste management facility. GHD has been working in partnership with Associated Engineering on this assignment. Jennifer Taylor is here with Associated Engineering, and Tessa is also here with GHD. So we'll provide a brief overview of where we're at on this project. So next slide. So talk a little bit about the project itself and where we're at. Then we'll go into the timelines, which the Ministry of Environment helped with as well, recognizing that this is a process that has many steps to actually site and then construct and ultimately operate a landfill in Saskatchewan. Then we'll go into the discretionary use application that was submitted by to the RM of Moose Jaw by the city. The engagement that's happened so far, including 2 public open houses we've had, what we've heard, and then next steps on the project as well. So if we go to the next slide. So to set the stage for this, which is something that probably everybody on council knows, the existing landfill is running out of space, and the city has undertaken a process to find a new.
Thanks, Mark. I'll just kind of give a brief overview of the timeline here. Mike kind of already talked about it, but there was the solid waste management plan developed in 2021, and then the conceptual design as well as technologies review and siting study that was done by GHD. And now we're kind of right here where we're at that land use approval and discretionary application process, and I'll kind of let Jen talk about that.
Great, thanks, Tessa. Once the city had secured the site, our main task was to lead the land use approval process on behalf of the city. Under the RM of Moose Jaw's zoning bylaw, the solid waste management facility is a discretionary use, so it does require approval from RM Council. Receiving land use approval from the RM was seen as a really important first step prior to the Ministry of Environment processes in order to confirm that the facility site could indeed be approved from a land use standpoint before proceeding with the more detailed process with the Ministry of Environment. So we met with the RM to understand what was needed for the discretionary use application and receive their initial thoughts on the proposed location. And during this meeting, engagement was identified as a really important component of that application. Next slide, please, Tessa. So throughout the project, we've engaged with several key stakeholders. Early on, as part of the siting study, we talked with 15 Wing, the Moose Jaw Municipal Airport, and the Ministry of Environment to ensure we understood those setback requirements for a solid waste facility. Once the site was secured and before we made that development application to the RM, we continued to consult with those stakeholders in addition to the Ministry of Highways, the Saskatchewan Health Authority, and Water Security Agency. We also reached out to neighboring landowners within 1.6 kilometers of the proposed facility. We sent them a letter and a flyer to introduce the project and invited them to meet with us and ask questions and share their concerns. To keep everyone in the loop, we set up a dedicated project webpage on the city's website. People can visit the webpage to find out about the project and ask questions. So far, we've received and responded to about 40 inquiries. We've also have a list of frequently asked questions there, which we've been updating regularly as we get more questions and as the project progresses. Next slide. In January, our project team began meeting with the RM weekly to work through that discretionary use process. The application was submitted to the RM on January 26th. Following their initial review, the RM asked that the city complete a traffic impact assessment as part of the application rather than at a later stage of the project. This assessment will help to better understand the future impacts of development on the surrounding road network, and it will inform specific upgrades that will be needed to address traffic safety. So the TIA, the traffic impact assessment, is nearly complete, and it's been prepared in consultation with both the RM of Moose Jaw and the Ministry of Highways, and we are going to submit that final report to the RM as part of that application. Next slide, please. In February, we held a public open house to inform both the city and RM ratepayers about the project. This wasn't a discretionary use requirement, but rather a city-led initiative that was strongly supported by the RM. In addition to the general invitation or advertising that went out to the public, we worked with the RM to send out just over 100 invitations to RM landowners and extended the invitation to regulatory bodies, utility providers, private haulers, and Indigenous communities. The event was really well attended. We had more than 100 people pass through the display boards and discuss the project with the three of us, as well as city staff and the Ministry of Environment. In March, the RM held its public hearing for the discretionary use application, where the project team and the Ministry of Environment made presentations to RM Council. There were about 70 people at this public hearing, and generally the RM landowners are opposed to the facility in this location. So I'm going to turn it over to Tessa to summarize the feedback that's been received from the public and talk about how some of those concerns will be addressed moving forward.
Thanks, Jen. So as you mentioned, we've completed a public open house, we've attended an RM public hearing, as well as various communications through the city's dedicated webpage. And we kind of included right here on the slide a bit of a summary on some of the feedback we've heard to date. This is not a robust list. There's a more robust list in the discretionary use application, but we just wanted to highlight on a few that have continuously come up. So as you can see, increased traffic, use of agriculture land, transparency communication, litter, odor, and environmental compliance were all some concerns that have been brought up to date. So what are we going to do about those concerns? First and foremost, those concerns of the stakeholders are shared concerns. They're the concerns of the RM, they are the concerns of the city, and the concerns of the regulators as well. And how we're going to address those? Three main things: best management practices, regulatory requirements, and a modern detailed design. As we heard from the ministry earlier, these facilities and the process to develop them is highly regulated, and we work together as a team to ensure that everyone's concerns are heard. So what do next steps look like? Continuous engagement is extremely important. We know that. We know it's important to communicate with the RM, but not only communicate with them and inform them, but involve them in the project and the next steps. So what does that look like? It looks like involving them in our weekly meetings, providing them updates, and really just working with them as one body, but not only them, the Ministry of the Environment. So we continue to encourage people to provide feedback and ask us questions. You can check out the dedicated webpage, which is up there on the screen, as well as send an email to the address displayed as well. Thank you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I will just see if there's any questions or comments from council. Councillor Blanc.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I'm just curious, is there any other newer landfill facilities that have opened up in the province or in adjacent provinces that you've had dealings with in the last few years?
Yeah, through the chair, I can answer that. Yeah, there have been a few. Siting a new landfill is a long and difficult process. That's why we try to have them a lifespan of 100 years or so. So it's not something that comes up regularly, but yes, it is something we've had some experience with. I will say that from my experience, each one should be considered as its own thing. The concerns of the residents, the location, the geology, all of it is separate. So while we do lean on experiences from the past, it's not a one size fits all when it comes to solid waste management facilities.
Okay,
but yeah, we certainly have.
Okay, thank you. Those facilities, I'm sure they've had the same questions and concerns by RMs or landowners in the facility, and a couple of them are the land, the value of the land, the litter, odor, dust, and whatnot. How are those managed in those? Have they been a problem after the fact, or are they dealt with?
Yeah, through the chair. So on land value, that's outside of our realm as the landfill engineers. But in terms of all of those other concerns, those are the concerns at any solid waste management facility, no matter where you are. And they're really dealt with by one, requirements of the design, and two, requirements of the operations plan. In this case, as the Ministry of Environment alluded to during their presentation, those will both be requirements before they actually approve this. So that's having that modern design and an operations plan that must be followed that minimizes those concerns like dust, blowing, litter, all of those things.
Okay, thank you. I believe that's all my questions right now. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Councillor Froese?
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you very much for the information and the update on the process. I'm also just wondering, so you said we're in the midst of the traffic study. I'm wondering when that will be complete, and then what actually happens after that as far as approval process or next decision-making process after the traffic study?
I can speak to that. So the traffic impact assessment is expected to be in the hands of the city this week, the draft. We anticipate meeting with the RM to talk through the draft and answer any questions that they have and go through any final revisions. In terms of the next step, are you referring to next steps in terms of the traffic assessment or in to the project in general?
I guess both. Yeah.
Yeah, so the traffic impact assessment will become part of the discretionary use application. It will also need to be submitted to the Ministry of Highways for their approval. So it will speak to the upgrades that would be required at that highway intersection in order for the project to proceed. And typically in a discretionary use application, the ministry would work with the RM to make that a condition of the approval, that those things that are outlined in the recommendations that they have previously approved in that assessment will be carried out as part of the project.
Okay, do you have an estimate of a time frame that might occur? Like how long are we looking at?
For the actual improvements?
Well, yeah, not to make its way through the ministry and back to the RM with the information regarding the intersection.
They don't expect that the ministry's approval will take very long. I believe that we've held 3 meetings with the ministry already, and they've reviewed the draft report prior to it even being submitted to the city. So the ministry's been working closely with Associated Transportation Engineers to prepare that. So they're expecting a fairly quick turnaround time in the approval process, I would guess by the end of the month.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Anything further? Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question through you to the team. You talked about best practices and the operations plan. What happens in the event that that plan isn't adhered to, and say there's litter blowing around, or perhaps the dust on the road from the traffic is becoming an annoyance? What steps are taken at that point?
Thanks for the question. Through the chair, that's the ministry has several mechanisms that they can use, and I realize this isn't their presentation, but they're probably chomping at the bit. They would tell you exactly which mechanism they would use for that. But once the design plan and the operations plan is in it, the Ministry of Environment requires that that's adhered to, and that the owner of the landfill will be providing annual reports on monitoring and the operations as well. So I can't speak to the specific mechanisms that the ministry would use in those cases, but they certainly continue to look on these sites on an ongoing basis. It isn't a construct and leave, it's a construct and continually oversight by the ministry to make sure that those requirements of the operations plan are being followed.
Right, thank you. And that's what I was getting at, is that we don't just build this and walk away, that it's monitored throughout the process and made sure that things are adhered to. So, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Logan. I have no further speakers in the queue. So I will thank you for your presentation, everyone, and for your hard work on this. And have a great evening. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Blanc?
I would move the communication CC 2024-0055 regarding the future solid waste management facility request to address representatives GHD Limited and Associate Engineering be received and filed.
Thank you, Councillor Blanc. Any speakers to the report before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Next item, we have communication 56 from the Parks and Recreation Department, special occasion permit application for Moose Jaw Lacrosse. Mr. Blais?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So similar to last season, Moose Jaw Lacrosse has once again requested authorization to operate a licensed serving area in the southwest corner of the Kinsman Arena for their junior lacrosse regular season games. There'd be a total of 7 games played that would be licensed. As per our alcohol use events policy, the Kinsman Sportsplex is listed as a discretionary use site for alcohol use events, which means that City Council approval would be required in order for us to provide the municipal approval. Looking back at the events last year, we had no reported issues from 2023. They expect approximately 40 people in attendance per game, and the funds raised through their licensed events help assist with travel costs for their junior lacrosse program. The Sportsplex would be open for regular hours during these events. We recommend that alcohol sales and consumption be limited to that southwest corner of the arena to be out of sight of any patrons or young families that are using the pool and any other facility amenities. Washroom access would be shared in the public lobby by both individuals that are there are using the facility and individuals at the licensed event. The Lacrosse Association would also work directly with the Kinsman Sportsplex concessionaire to provide food services as per their permit requirements. I think it's also important to note that SLGA would have the final approval of the request once municipal approval has been granted. The SLGA regulations state that all or a portion of a sports arena may be permitted for the service and consumption of beverage alcohol, provided that the permittee can monitor and control access to the facility, the consumption of beverage alcohol, and the conduct of guests. SLGA does not typically endorse a special occasion permit to allow minors to attend a liquor club event unless it's taking place as part of a larger event that is not specifically focused on beverage alcohol, which is the case with this request. So once municipal approval is granted, SLGA then evaluates the request as part of their permitting process to determine whether the event is appropriate and will be allowed to proceed with a permit. So in closing, we do recommend that the application be approved, subject to the conditions outlined in the City of Moose Jaw alcohol use events policy. If it is approved by council, we will work with Moose Jaw Lacrosse and SLGA in providing the necessary municipal approvals. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments, direction? Counselor Logan?
Thank you, Chair. Just had a question through you, and perhaps it's in here and I didn't see it, but through you, Chair, to Director Blais, you had said you recommend that the alcohol be contained to that corner. Is it a recommendation or is that a requirement? Are they, like if they're wandering around and not adhering to it and we've only recommended it, can we do anything about it or is it have to be?
We are recommending the council let it go into that location. If council accepts that recommendation, then it would become a requirement.
Okay, thank you. And security, it says 2 security. Are they, again, are they insured security guards per se, or just the random people that are throwing a security shirt?
Due to the size of this event, I believe approximately 40 people, we would not require a licensed security provider. It could be something that's done on a volunteer basis, whether through their board of directors or other volunteers.
Okay, fair. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Logan. Counselor Blanc?
Thank you.
Sorry, sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Director Blais. Just a quick question. Most of the people that are attending it are Moose Jaw residents. Like, there's not a lot of people that come from out of town, is there?
Good question. I don't know, I guess, where the people would be from. My assumption would be, yes, mostly Moose Jaw residents, with knowing that there would be, depending on who they're playing against, their opponents come from other communities, depending on how big that contingency is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this is a good event for the city, and I think it's a good process. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Froese?
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to see the report. I was wondering how this went for them for last year. So I'd like to make the motion that the Moose Jaw Lacrosse Association be authorized to operate licensed events at the Kinsman Sportsplex Arena located at 855 McDonald Street West on the following dates: Saturday, April 27th, 2024 from 6:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Saturday, May 11th, 2024 from 2:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 from 1:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Friday, May 31st, 2024 from 6:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Saturday, June 15th, 2024 from 7 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Friday, June 21st, 2024 from 7 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. and Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024 from 7 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. and that the approval of the licensed events be subject to all conditions outlined in the City of Moose Jaw alcohol use events policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Froese. Motion has been made. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Next is communication number 58, also from the Parks and Recreation Department, to read special occasion permit for the Royal Canadian Legion. Mr. Blais?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, another special occasion permit application, which is discretionary use, therefore requires council approval. This is another event that has turned into an annual event. This would be the third time or third consecutive year that this event is offered by the Royal Canadian Legion. So they've requested authorization for the licensed outdoor cabaret and street dance on the 200 block of High Street West, which would occur from 5 o'clock p.m. on Saturday, June 29th until 2 a.m. on Sunday, June 30th. The funds raised from this event help ensure the long-term sustainability of our local branch. They are estimating that approximately 800 people would attend. They have also indicated their readiness to meet or exceed all conditions outlined by both the city and by Saskatchewan Liquor and Gaming Authority. We have not been made aware of any concerns or issues arising from events in previous years. And then also for this one, due that it's an outdoor event, so in addition to providing the municipal approval for the special occasion permit, we are also recommending that an exemption to the noise bylaw be provided to accommodate the event. With this, the city would collaborate closely with the Legion to issue notices to the public and businesses regarding both the street closure and implications of the noise bylaw. And we've listed the recommendations there within the report. So again, happy to answer any questions of council.
Thank you. Councillor Looning.
Thank you, Councillor Eby. Well, I'd be happy to move the motion that's in the report because this has been a very successful event for the Royal Canadian Legion over the last few years. And congratulations to them for finding a fun summer way to raise money for the branch. So I'll move that the Royal Canadian Legion number 59 be authorized to operate a licensed cabaret and street dance on the 200 block of High Street West from 5 p.m. on June 29th, 2024 to 2 a.m. on the 30th of June, 2024, and that the approval of the licensed cabaret and street dance be subject to all conditions outlined in the City of Moose Jaw alcohol use events policy, and that an exemption to bylaw number 5488 noise bylaw be granted from 10 p.m. on the 29th of June, 2024 to 2 a.m. on the 30th of June, 2024 to accommodate this event.
Thank you, Councillor Luning. Councillor Froese, some reason you got booted out of there. Councillor Froese.
Thank you. Just a question through you, Chair. Was last year's till 2 a.m. as well? Or is that an additional
Director Blake
length of time they've added?
Yeah, thank you for the question through the chair. I believe, yes, the previous events had the same operating hours. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll support this motion. I do know also they were part of the committee looking at incorporating the Royal Canadian Air Force 100th anniversary theme, and this is one of their events too that they're going to do that with. So I'll support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No further speakers in the queue. Call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Final item on Committee of the Whole this evening is Communication 57 from the Secretary of the Development Appeals Board, record of decision of the Development Appeals Board. Administration.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Council. So before you is a procedural matter under the Planning and Development Act 2007. I present to you the decision of the March 19th, 2024 Development Appeals Board hearing, granting a variance under the City of Moose Jaw zoning bylaw for an accessory dwelling or an accessory building. I just ask to receive and file, please.
Thank you. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Chair. I'd move that the following decision of the Development Appeals Board be received and filed. 02-2024 William P. Campbell, 2801 Caribou Street West.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Your Committee of the Whole begs to report as follows.
Thank you, Councillor Eby. Councillor Eby moves that the report of the Committee of the Whole be taken as read, received, and adopted. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Luning, all in favor? That is carried. Next, we have a report of standing committees of City Council. I'll need a motion at the report of the Executive Committee meeting dated March 25th, 2024 be taken as read. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Eby, second by Councillor Blanc. All in favor? That is carried. Next, we'll move into matters arising from standing committees. Do any councillors wish to bring forward an item from the Executive Committee meeting? The minutes are from March 25th, 2024. I'm seeing none. Next, then, I'll need a motion that the report of the Executive Committee meeting dated March 25th, 2024 be received and adopted. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Froese, seconded by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? That is carried. Next, we have reports of advisory and other committees. We have a report of the Accessible Community Advisory Committee minutes from March 14th, 2024.
Thank you, Your Worship. Accessible Community Advisory Committee met on March 14th. I was absent from that meeting. However, they did have nothing to bring to council, so I would just move that the minutes of the Accessible Community Advisory Committee meeting held on March 14th, 2024 be received and adopted.
That is second by Councillor Eby. All in favor? That is carried. Next, we have the report of the Heritage Advisory Committee, minutes from March 20th, 2024. Councillor Froese?
Thank you, Mayor. There are a couple of things that require council's approval. The first being the Heritage Advisory Committee had a presentation by Jessica McNaughton on her program called Memory Keeper. The Heritage Advisory Committee has been working for well over a year on collating history via videos and information in archives to have it placed on our city's website additional information for all of the plaques that you see around the city that have information about heritage sites. So this is actually a process that's been enhanced. So now we actually have video and narration, and it's quite an extensive database. Director Blais has been helping the committee by hosting it on the city's server because it's quite an extensive video collection. And we've partnered with Sass Poly students to help us with some of the video editing. A group of teachers have actually done some of the editing. So it's quite an extensive collection of the history of our city. And so Ms. McNaughton has a online program called Memory Keeper that actually would, in probably one of the easiest and quickest ways, is to collect this data and actually have it in a format that would be super easily accessible for the public. It would include the QR code, and it would easily be attached by a link to our website. And so the Heritage Advisory Committee would like City Council to consider a pilot project for a year to see how this would work. It would speed up the process a lot faster, so we would like to have City Council approve an invitation to have Ms. McNaughton come to City Council or Executive Committee meeting and present this program so you have a much better idea, and she'll have some visuals to show you of what this could look like for the city and for all the hundreds of hours of work of the volunteers that have been working on this and what that might look like. So I would like to move that City Council consider the Memory Keeper pilot project for the purpose of the Heritage Plaques QR code project initiated by the city's Heritage Advisory Committee, with the committee willing to initially fund the pilot project, and that a representative from Memory Keeper be invited to present to City Council about the pilot project at the next available City Council meeting.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Second by Councillor Eby. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Looney?
Thank you, Mayor Tolley. Just a question to the mayor or to the committee. I guess what I'd like to know is in the wording of the initial part of the motion, it says that the committee is willing to initially fund the project. Well, what is this going to cost? And is it going to be a substantial amount of money? Or, I mean, I don't know if I really want to just approve something without knowing what the budget is. So I have a little bit of hesitancy on that part, because I think when you're starting a project like this and the motion actually says that the committee wants to initially fund the project, I think council needs to have some information as to what the budget is going to be and how it might turn out. I have no problem with Ms. McNaughton providing a presentation, but I just think that we need to have a budget as to what this might look like.
Can I clear the queue so that Councillor Froese can respond?
Thank you. Yep, that's a great question. It's she's quoted us at, of course, advisory committees only have up to $1,000. So she's actually quoted $500 for this pilot project to try it for a year, and which is why the Heritage Advisory Committee wanted to recommend that they would fund it as a pilot project for the first year. And so this motion is only for council to consider. This isn't committing us to moving forward until we've actually seen the presentation as well.
Any other questions? I'm sorry, Councillor Eby, you wanted to speak?
I think my question was answered. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of that motion? Opposed, that is carried.
Thank you. And so the next motion for council to consider is we have been approached by the Moose Jaw Museum and Art Gallery regarding the picture box installation. They would like to install a large picture box outside on the wall of their building. And so they want the opportunity and the approval from council to do so. So I would move that the installation of a picture box be approved on the front of the Moose Jaw Museum and Art Gallery building.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Robinson, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried.
Okay, and the next one is regarding the old CPR station, the clock tower. Some of you have noticed that, that it hasn't been lit. There's been some disrepair over time, and Mr. John Trod, who's also been kind of the clock expert for our City Hall clock, is also the steward of that clock, and he does so on a complete volunteer basis. And so he's been really advocating for funding to be able to fully restore the clock back to its operation. And so there's been an opportunity that has come up through CPRKC, and the owners of the building to actually fund to have this repaired. And so you've probably seen they had a crane out there taking down the old lights just recently. And there's you've also probably noticed that there's the hour and the minute hands are missing from the clock because those are also being repaired. But they do require approval from council regarding the actual light fixtures that are going to be installed. The ones that were up there are not able to be replaced, so they've come up with a more modern way, but something that won't take away from the aesthetics of the heritage of the building either. So I'd move that City Council approve the replacement of all light fixtures on the old CPR station clock tower, pending approval of the new light fixtures by the Heritage Advisory Committee ahead of installation.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Logan? Councillor Eby?
Thank you. Well, I will vote in favor of this, but I do note that in here it does not speak to who's paying for these, so I do think that that should be captured in there, that this doesn't come back at somewhere down the road, like, oh, you know, like you've said how it's being funded, but I think that needs to be captured in the motion.
Councillor Froese, did you wish to amend that motion?
Yes, if I could add, City Clerk, that this is being funded by the owner of the building and the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Limited.
Councillor Logan, would you accept that amendment? Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Is carried.
And lastly is the minutes. I would move that the minutes of the Heritage Advisory Committee meeting held March 20th, 24 be received and adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Robinson, all in favor? That's carried. Next we have minutes of the cleanup committee. Councillor Eby.
Thank you, Your Worship. These are the minutes of the Community Cleanup Committee, which meeting was held Tuesday, March 26, 2024 was the first meeting of the year. And no approval necessary coming from these minutes, but just a couple things. First of all, I'd like to thank Mayor Tolley for attending. He doesn't have to attend this meeting, but he chose to be there because he's
passionate about making sure the city's clean this spring, and he has some good ideas going forward and to be part of that. So really appreciated him being there. When I walked in, I thought, oh, I'm at the wrong meeting because the mayor's here, but anyways, it wasn't. The other thing, my colleagues may have noted that I nominated myself as chairperson, not because I thought I should be the chair, but because no one else was willing to do it. And the committee was made aware that usually councillors aren't the chair people of these committees, but because it's really just one or possibly two events a year, we felt that it would be all right. So the committee has set the date for the community cleanup this year for Sunday, May the 5th, 2024, same hours as previous, 10 until about 1:30. We're hoping to have more representation on the committee from community groups. As the membership is down this year, attendance was lower than has been in the past. And we have City of Moose Jaw staff that works really hard on this event, and I'd like to thank them as well for the work they're putting in ahead of time. And also the Moose Jaw Co-op has again sponsored the event. So everyone put May 5th on your calendar, and hopefully everyone will get out there and support this event by doing some cleanup in your neighborhood. And with that, I will move that the minutes of the Community Cleanup Committee meeting held March 26, 2024 be received and adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Froese.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mayor Tolley. I just have a question. I think it's wonderful that we have a concerted effort one day of the year that tries to tackle the littering problem. But it seems like littering is exponentially just growing, and I've really noticed it in the last couple of years, and I'm not quite sure what the reasoning is for that. But there's areas along 9th Avenue East, Thatcher Drive. The one-ways are always seem to have litter. Like I know being part of the cleanup for South Hill, we've done a couple of those areas, and then we find a couple of months later, even by midsummer, it's populated again with more trash. So I'm just wondering if the cleanup committee might consider maybe some other initiatives that we might be able to add to our year, and that just because this just seems to be growing, but it is really wonderful that we're making concerted effort with this event. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for that, Councillor Froese. The committee did discuss actually, and that having, so it's not really the city identifies like that week, and then another week in the fall. So we're talking about hosting a second event in the fall. But what I did forget to mention is that city staff has suggested that this year the committee really emphasize public safety due to some recent events that have happened regarding that. And so the city staff who are more versed in safety are going to be the ones that take the initiative along the Manitoba Expressway in those areas that we all know and we identified at that meeting are very bad, but we do not want to put any public people at risk along those areas. So we're very aware of those. And I also agree that the entire community needs to think about this every day, not just one day a year. And as my little 4-year-old grandson says, Grandma, there's a lot of glitter around this city. And it's not glitter, but there's lots of it. So anyways, I have made the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Eby. So you had moved the motion. It was seconded by Councillor Looning that the minutes be received and adopted. All in favor? As carried. Madam City Clerk, I erred and we approved 3 things that were requiring council approval in the Heritage Advisory Committee, and then I omitted or forgot that we needed to actually have a motion to approve the Heritage Advisory Committee minutes from March 20th, 2024.
You did it.
Did I do it?
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Okay, all right. I thought maybe I'd slipped by. All right, thank you, Councillor Eby. Does any member wish to rise to bring forward a notice of motion this evening? I see none. Therefore, we'll go forward with motions. Councillor Looney?
Thank you, Mayor Tolley. I will move that whereas Canada is experiencing record population growth, having welcomed 1.25 million new Canadians last year alone, and whereas according to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, we need to build at least 3.5 million additional homes by 2030, and municipalities need to build or expand the infrastructure to accommodate this growth. And whereas FCM has estimated that the cost of the municipal infrastructure required to support housing development is on average in the range of $107,000 per unit. And whereas according to Statistics Canada, the cost to upgrade existing municipal infrastructure so that it is in a good state, in a state of good repair, is in the range of $170 billion. And whereas non-residential construction price inflation has risen by 29% since the end of 2020, and municipalities are facing soaring costs for infrastructure projects without a corresponding growth in revenue. And whereas unlike federal and provincial revenue, municipal tax revenue has not increased in recent years along with inflation, economic growth, or population growth. And whereas municipalities are facing a gap in federal infrastructure funding as the 10-year Investing in Canada infrastructure program has come to an end, the Canada Community Building Fund is being renegotiated, and the Permanent Public Transit Fund is set to start in 2026. Whereas the Canadian Community Building Fund, which was formerly known as the Federal Gas Tax Fund, provides more than $2.4 billion in annual capital funding directly to municipalities through a predictable allocation mechanism, and municipalities of all sizes use this fund to deliver direct results for Canadians by building and renewing critical core public infrastructure, including water infrastructure, local roads, public transit and community and cultural and recreation facilities. Therefore, be it resolved that the federal government work with agreement signatories and municipalities to maintain the CCBF as a source of direct, predictable, long-term funding for local infrastructure priorities, formerly known as the Gas Tax Fund, and be it further resolved that the federal government commit in Budget 2024 to the next generation of infrastructure programs, including a new program for water and wastewater infrastructure and an increase to the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, and be it further resolved that the federal government convene provinces, territories, and municipalities to negotiate a municipal growth framework to modernize the way that municipalities are funded in order to enable Canada's long-term growth.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Logan? Any discussion?
Thank you, Mayor Tolley. I'll just briefly, because I think the whereases probably spoke to what we were getting at here. The concern here is that the federal government right now is toying with our gas tax fund, and there's a possibility that it might disappear. And I'm going to actually, and I guess to preface that, obviously council knows and administration understands, but I think the taxpayers need to understand the amount of money that this city has received over the years with the gas tax fund, and the fact that the federal government is considering possibly getting rid of that could mean huge, huge costs to our taxpayers and to our citizens for future infrastructure projects. And I just want to briefly, Mr. Acker was kind enough to send me a list of some of the money that has been used towards these projects, and I just am going to name a few because there are probably 10 of them here that have received money over the years from the gas tax fund. The wastewater treatment system upgrade was an estimated project cost of $18.5 million, and we got $9.5 million from the gas tax fund. The Buffalo Pound water treatment upgrades, the estimated project cost $10 million, and we got $5 million. The East Water feeder line and water main replacement, just under $15 million is the cost, and we received $3,089,000 for that project. And there's a whole list here. And so I would urge council to just put this motion on the books, because we need the federal government to understand that that we cannot afford as municipalities to be downloaded upon for some of the costs that we take on in these big infrastructure projects. So we need our voices to be heard, that we need to hang on to our gas tax fund. And so I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Froese?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll definitely support this motion, and I really appreciate that it's come before us, because the fund that's in question here, you know, has a huge impact on what we can do here at a municipality. After Councillor Leuning put this motion forward, I looked around on the internet and that to see, because obviously this doesn't just impact us, it impacts a lot of municipalities, and there's other municipalities who are actually putting this motion forward as well. And I think it's kind of been triggered through the federal municipality, as Councillor Leuning said. I'm just wondering though, once we make this motion, what direction do our staff have? Is this just mean that we write a letter on behalf of this, or is there action that our staff have to undertake?
Madam City Manager?
Thank you for the question, Chair. We were contacted already by SUMA they wanted our opinion on the proposal. So that was already voiced, the opposition was already voiced on the administration side. And I think if this motion passes, then it supports administration's position for sure. At this point, I don't know of any other tangible actions for administration.
Thank you.
Councillor Leuning?
Thank you. Just briefly, I will just mention to council, I'm sure some of you remember, but Mr. Acker and Ms. Carmichael did alert us to this about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and told us to be aware of it. And then in my attendance at the last SUMA board meeting, we of course were speaking about it, and many of the municipalities around the table were going to bring this motion forward, and that's why it's here tonight, because I did our part on our behalf to make sure that we try and protect this fund from being eliminated. Thank you.
All in favor of this motion? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Eby?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that administration be directed to prepare a full report on the concept and process of creating an official Downtown Business Improvement District, otherwise known as a BID, in Moose Jaw. The report is to include all related information, including options for a potential funding source for a newly created BID.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Froese. Councillor Eby?
Thank you. So as council representative on the Downtown Moose Jaw Association, this has really been the vision of the Downtown Moose Jaw Association, that they would at some point in the future have a bid created, and they're at that point now that they're really starting to talk about that seriously. And so my request my motion is just that we as this council would have all the information we need, because it has to be a motion of council to create a bid, or at least I think it does. I'm sure it does. But we need to, we haven't had a bid as this group. It's been almost a decade, I think, since we've had an official business improvement district. And so I think the information that will come to us through such a report will give us the information that we need to make a decision. And I think really important to clarify for the downtown group as well as for ourselves, the funding of a business improvement district, who pays what, and the process, who does what. Because I think there is a little bit of gray area there that maybe doesn't need to be gray, but we need to have it in black and white. So hope you'll support my motion so that we can figure this out and help that association move forward if that's what council decides to do.
Do we have any speakers? Councillor Froese?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I second this motion, and I will support it. I think it's, you know, the strategic plan that they presented was really comprehensive, and they're trying to align themselves with the downtown local area plan. and there was a previous bid that was very successful. I mean, when you look at the downtown core and you look at the old lighting and some of the improvements that were done in the 1980s, that was all part of the bid program. And that's one of the things that a bid does, is look at improving things like that within their downtown core. But it is a long process. On the Saskatchewan Economic Development Association website, they outline it really well. There's about 9 different steps, and it includes a lot of engagement with commercial and business owners in the downtown area, because there's a couple of different ways that this can be funded. And one, of course, is a levy. And that. So it's really important that consultation happens in a really comprehensive way, so that there's complete buy-in by everybody in that. And of course, determining the area is also really important. So I'm very interested to see, as they progress through this process, what this looks like and some of the information that comes forward from this, and to see where it leads. So I am supporting this motion. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Mayor Tully.
no, that's a problem.
I wasn't going to, but then.
No problem. Councillor Looney?
Thank you. I'm not opposed to this, but I wonder how long. We must have some information already. Question through you, Mayor Tully, to administration. We must possibly have some information already about how this would work. That I guess with everything that administration has going on, I know it's your job to do this, but I just hope we don't reinvent the wheel. You know what I mean? I don't want it taking up a whole bunch of administration's time, because there are, obviously there are other bids out there. I will say though, every bid operates a little bit differently. They're funded differently, that sort of thing. So, I mean, it might be a good idea to get a little bit of information too from, like, Regina, Saskatoon, PA, those other places. But I guess I know, because I was on the downtown group before as well, that they're really interested in this bid concept. I'm not convinced it's the best way to go at this time of day right now, with wanting to possibly get a levy off of the businesses but I mean, that's not I'm one out of, and there may be something that changes my mind. I just wonder how long it will take administration to put that report together. Thank you. I know you probably don't know, but.
City Manager?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Through you to Councillor Looning. Preemptively, because I knew from discussion with Councillor Eby that this was a topic of conversation that was coming. When I met 2 weeks ago, actually, with the Saskatchewan City Managers Forum, we did discuss what is ongoing in different cities, and I know Prince Albert has a new concept, and I do have that information already. So in discussion with them, plus administration, especially Director Acker and Acting Director Hemingway, I don't think it will be a considerable amount of time to be able to just assemble all the information and present it to Council.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Tully.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? That is carried. There are no bylaws this evening. Are there any inquiries to be asked of City Administration? Councillor Looney.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. Just one question through you to administration. Just wondering when street cleaning might begin. Thank you.
Mr. Harleton.
Thank you, Chair. Street sweeping is scheduled to start the week of April 22nd.
Councillor Blanc.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to administration. I was just curious, and I know there's lots of potholes out there. I'm not going to get into where they all are, but I know the hot mix plant is not up and running. I was just curious on an estimated date when City will be able to acquire hot mix for these poles.
Mr. Harleton.
Thank you, Chair. Our asphalt supply tender closes April 16th. I can't comment on when that will be available to us, but our tender will be closed. Our tender will be closed on the 16th, which will allow us to procure it when the plants are online.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blanc. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of quick inquiries and also an apology to the administration. Last week we got into a bit of a debate, and the inquiries are not, we're not here to debate with inquiries. And so I'd like to apologize for council for the debate. I should have made my point and then sat my butt back down. So the inquiry I have today is last year we were running low on line paint. Apparently there was a shortage of paint in the world of all things. And I'm wondering this year if there's a shortage of line paint again, and if that will affect us in the upcoming season.
Thank you for the question. We have something like 6 pallets carried over from last year to start us off for the season, and I'm not anticipating any problems with that procurement, but we do have material on hand to start us off.
Thank you. And the second and last inquiry is, we talked at one point about potentially rebar and sidewalk design in the high hydraulic areas where there's substantial movement. Is that a thing in tenders yet, or is that to come in the future?
I had hoped that that would be included in the tenders that we put out this year. I personally support it in locations of smaller lengths. You know, for example, if we're doing full block slip forming, that's a different thing. But I personally believe that rebar and sidewalks helps because the National Master Specifications project's not complete and those details and formalized templates aren't in. It's not in this year's construction tenders. I also need to work with engineering to you know, be fair and hear their thoughts. I don't think there's as much support for it as I have myself, but it is something that is on my own radar still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Are there, I'm sorry, but there are no written answers to inquiries this evening. Our next meeting of City Council is scheduled for Monday, April 22nd, 2024, and with that, we're adjourned. 5-minute recess and begin executive.